All right. So I am so glad you are here. What can you learn in the next 21 minutes? We're about to find out. Welcome to the 21 in 21 talks, where we invite speakers to share their 21-minute talks about all kinds of topics ranging from beer brewing to business building. The series consists of 21 talks, 21 minutes long, all taking place in 2021. So speakers can choose to use slides, they can choose to forego them, they can choose to do Q&As. It's really up to the speakers. As long as they don't go over 21 minutes, the floor is theirs. All of the talks can be watched live, or they can be watched as replays on the Association Chat YouTube channel, which this is your moment. If you're watching this on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to Association Chat, do so right now. Get the reminders so that you don't miss any of them. And so now for this 21 in 21 special talk, we are featuring Sherry Marts. Now, Sherry is a former association chief executive. She's a current consultant whom you may have seen all over the association industry, listservs and blogs and all of this stuff. I love Sherry's participatory is what I'm trying to say, but I'm saying I want to say participation, okay? I love seeing Sherry's participation everywhere. And, you know, if you don't run into her in other places related to association industry topics, you might find her nosing around the reefs of Saba Marine Park as soon as she can get the COVID vaccine that will allow her to get there. Sherry's going to be able to answer your questions as we go along. So if you feel inclined to ask questions along the way, just post them into the chat wherever you are watching this live. I'm going to make sure that she sees them. And before we get started, hi, Sherry. Thank you for doing this. I'm so excited.
Well, thanks. You know, it's probably a relief to some of the people watching this that they're not going to have to listen to me express an opinion about it, but much of anything except Saba.
Oh,
I'm really excited because it's a chance to talk about one of my favorite places on the planet.
Yeah, and Ron says, I'm ready for some more Italian learning. Yes, Ron, me too. So Sherry, is there anything that anyone needs to know before they go into watching this?
No, well, nothing in particular except I guess just prepare to be enchanted.
Ooh.
So one of the secrets about Saba is that people come to visit for a few days or a week or even a couple of weeks, and the next thing you know, they're talking to a real estate agent.
Well, if that doesn't entice anyone, I don't know what will. So with that, Sherry, thank you so much for doing this. We'll bring you back afterwards. And we introduce to you Saba.
Here in 20 minutes is my story about Saba, the unspoiled queen of the Caribbean. Saba is a special municipality of the Netherlands that lies in the Caribbean Sea. It's part of the Leeward Islands in the Caribbean, and there it is, just about 30 miles south of St. Martin. Saba is 5 square miles with a year-round population of about 1,800 people. The official language is Dutch, but most people on the island speak English, although it's spoken with an accent unlike any other in the Caribbean. The currency is the US dollar. Saba has 4 main villages, and they're strung out along the main paved road in the island, known as the Road. The road reaches from Flat Point, which is where the airport is located, all the way to Fort Bay, which is where boats, including dive boats and supply boats, dock and unload and load. The 4 main villages are Hell's Gate, Windward Side, The Bottom, and St. John's. Saba is an active volcano, although the last eruption occurred more than 600 years ago. We know that it's active because there are underwater hot springs in several points around the island. This arrow points to Mount Scenery, kind of in the middle of the island. It's the highest point in the Kingdom of the Netherlands at 887 meters. And this one points to Johnny's Ground, which is a quiet spot and the location of a little cottage built by Danny Hassel in the 1980s and later named for a tree that grew on the property. It's called Flamboyant Cottage. My spouse and I bought Flamboyant Cottage in 2010, just about the time Saba became a special municipality of the Netherlands when the Netherlands Antilles dissolved. So I'm going to see if I can convince you not to visit Saba. And the first reason why you might not want to go there are no beaches. Well, there's this beach. It's known as the Wandering Beach, and it comes and goes depending on the swell and the currents. So one day it's there, the next day it's not. There are no big resorts. There are 4 hotels on the island, the poshest one being Queen's Gardens, which you can see here just above the letter E in resorts. And there are lots of rental cottages, including Flamboyant Cottage. This is a view of the bottom, which is the largest of the villages, and the location of government offices, a medical clinic, and a medical school. Reason number 3, to not visit Saba. There are no casinos. Well, there's a regular Tuesday night poker game, but you kind of have to know who's in it to get into it. There are no shopping centers, no chain restaurants. In fact, this is about as close as you're going to get to a shopping center. It's a small art gallery and a sort of general store located on the road in Windward Side, locally owned, of course. Another reason not to visit Saba? Cruise ships don't stop there. There are not the hordes of tourists arriving on cruise ships, and because Fort Bay Harbor is not deep enough to support large cruise ships. And even if they could, there's not much on Saba to tempt your typical Caribbean cruiser. And the final reason why you should not visit Saba is the airport. The landing and takeoff on the shortest international runway in the world is not for the faint of heart, and if you search on Saba takeoff or Saba landing on YouTube, you'll get a feel for how exciting this little adventure can be. You do have the option of taking a ferry from St. Martin if you'd rather not fly. The area to the right of the airport is a relatively new array of solar panels. Solar energy provides much of the electrical power on Saba, up to 100% of the electrical power on sunny days. So despite these 5 reasons, let me see if I can persuade you that you do need to add Saba to your must-visit list. We'll start with the diving. My spouse and I came to Saba for the diving. Saba has some of the most spectacular reefs in the Caribbean. Tropical fish, reef critters including this lobster, tiny cleaner shrimp, and lots of adolescent sea turtles hang around the reefs. The most famous feature of Saba's reefs are the pinnacles. This one's called the Needle. These are lava fingers that jut up from the sea floor. The top of this pinnacle sits at about 90 feet of depth, and the sea floor is several hundred feet down, and most of the pinnacles start at about 80 to 100 feet of depth. All kinds of corals and sponges, large schools of blue-headed wrasse, and plenty of other reef life, and pelagics like sharks and rays are found along the pinnacles. Now, if diving isn't your thing, you can always take a hike. The hiking trails on Saba are what remain of the original roads that were used to travel between the villages on foot or by donkey before the road was built, and a few more have been added since this map was made. For a tiny island, Saba offers a wide variety of ecozones. You can hike through spectacular cloud forest. You can end up at desert-like scrubland. And perhaps the most popular hike is the Mount Scenery Trail. You follow it from Windward Side to the highest point in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And then after you've come back down, stop by the tourism office to pick up your official certificate. The view from the top is amazing, provided the clouds have cleared. There's a reason it's called a cloud forest, after all. Now, if heights aren't your thing, you can visit the tide pools. Say hello to the thriving colony of long-spined sea urchins, an endangered species that's been successfully reintroduced on Saba. Now, our first visits to Saba were for the diving and the hiking. What we didn't expect was to become so attached to the people. Saba is on every list you'll find of the friendliest islands in the Caribbean. usually at the top of the list. And I could easily have done a 20-minute talk just about the wonderful friends we've made there. This photo is of muralist Joan Bork, who's the original owner of the Sea Saba Dive Center, and she's shown here with some Saban school kids finishing a mural on the wall of the community center in Windward Side. You'll find Joan's murals all around the island. And here are two other folks you'll meet on Saba. This is Lynn Costanero, who owns and operates the Sea Saba PADI Certified Dive Center with her partner John Major. She's shown here introducing a speaker for a program that she started 20 years ago called See and Learn, originally developed to help satisfy the need of Sabans to more fully understand what makes Saba unique. See and Learn now happens every October and has become a draw for tourists as well as locals. Experts from around the world do evening presentations, field projects, and spend time at the school doing projects with the kids. If you have any interest in environmental science, a visit to Saba in October should be on your list. And this is James Johnson, also known as Crocodile James. If you're interested in hiking, he's your man. He oversees trail maintenance, sometimes with volunteer help, sometimes single-handedly. He's a self-taught naturalist and tells wonderful stories of Saba's natural and human history, and most of those stories are even true. You can book a guided hike with James, including a chance to visit the old sulfur mine, which is now off-limits for unguided visitors. Another reason to visit Saba, the arts. Saba has a robust arts community, and the artists on Saba share not just their work, but their knowledge and the fun of creating. This is Jobeen Chambers, a world-renowned glass artist, whose studio in Windward Side is the place to find both wonderful glass art and great conversation. Here's an example of Jobeen's work. She offers anyone who's interested a chance to try their hand at making glass beads. I've done it and gained an even greater respect for the amazing art she creates. It's really not easy. Another artist on Saba is Helene Cornett. She's a painter whose depictions of Saba's beauty on land and under the water are both unique and instantly recognizable. You can find her work and that of other local artists at the Five Square Art Gallery in Windward Side, and inside the Roman Catholic Church in the bottom. She painted the chancel there with a mural where the apostles and the saints look remarkably like well-known Sabans. Helene regularly offers classes on landscape painting on Saba. And finally, the creation of the Saba lace ladies are unique to the island. This pulled thread technique, also called Spanish work, was introduced to the island in the late 1800s, and I'll have a lot more to say about Saba lace a little bit later. Now, lots of folks think Saba is for the birds. Bird watchers flock to Saba. The variety of ecozones on Saba and the tiny size of the island make it a great place to tick off your must-see list. You'll find birds big and small, from hummingbirds to frigate birds. There's a large nesting site of red-billed tropic birds on the island that's become a valuable research site for understanding the species. Banana quits abound, as do kestrels, merlins, and peregrine falcons. Terns, brown boobies, zenata doves, and pearly-eyed thrashers are plentiful as well. Another reason to visit Saba, the critters. Saba's fauna includes some introduced species, like this coqui, a species of tree frog native to Puerto Rico. These frogs are tiny. This one's a large specimen. But they make an outsized amount of noise. They sing us to sleep every night. Others are less adorable. Semi-feral goats cause problems by eating vegetation, resulting in erosion. And rats, well, nobody likes rats. And on Saba, they're despised because they eat the eggs of the tropic birds and other seabirds. The government's working to get rid of both of these species. There are also feral chickens on Saba, not as destructive as goats and rats, but in some parts of the island, the roosters will wake you up at astonishingly early hours. This is a Saba racer, one of the endogenous species on Saba. It's found only on the island. It's also the only species of snake on the island. It is non-venomous, and it earns its name. It's an extremely fast animal. This is the Saba anole, another species unique to Saba. The spots mean that this is a mature male. Females and immature males don't have spots. They're just sort of a solid dark green. Saba does have some native mammals, all of which are bats. This is an example of a Caribbean fruit bat. Another reason to visit Saba is you won't go hungry. You'll find a remarkable variety of places to eat, from ultra-fancy gourmet dining to Caribbean cuisine to burgers and pizza. What you won't find are chain restaurants, and the coffee shop is not a Starbucks. If you prefer to cook your own meals, there are 3 grocery stores, an organic garden, a fish market, and a wine shop to make it easy. And you can help preserve Caribbean reefs by eating lots of delicious lionfish, which you'll find on many of the restaurant menus on Saba. This is a species native to the South Pacific. It's invasive and destructive in the Caribbean. They reproduce like rabbits, they'll eat pretty much anything, and lots of it. The flesh is mild and delicate, similar to lobster. The Saba Conservation Foundation is working on a modified lobster pot for catching the bigger lionfish where they like to hang out, much deeper than a diver with a spear can safely go. And you can also buy jewelry made from the fins and the spines of the lionfish. The 8th reason to visit Saba, its rich and colorful history. Sabans are proud of their history and their culture, and rightly so. There's a lot to talk about in Saba's past. The Carib and Arawak tribes, whose arrival and departures from the island are still being studied by archaeologists. The pirates, who it is said hid treasure on the island, some of which may yet to be found. The schemers and dreamers who tried everything from sulfur mining to salt production. Subsistence farmers and those who ventured out to sea to fish the prolific Saba Bank, which is still a source of revenue for the island today. The travelers who were the first to dive the reefs around the island, and some of whom stayed to establish Saba as a dive destination by helping to create the first protected marine park in the Caribbean, and more. I'm going to focus on 2 highlights that visitors hear about: the road and Saba lace. Oh, and I do want to give props to Will Johnson. He's a native Saban historian. His website is absolutely amazing. So the original roads on Saba were walking trails, and transportation around the island was on foot or by donkey. This bakery has an order of flour to unload and some deliveries to make along those roads. Everything that was brought onto the island came in at what's now known as Ladder Bay. Large ships would anchor offshore, and Sabans would row sturdy hand-built boats out to bring the cargo ashore. Everything included building materials, foodstuffs, a grand piano, and the Queen of the Netherlands. Now, until 1934, cargo was carried from Ladder Bay to the bottom up this gut road. And a gut are the sort of creases that you see between the ridges on the island that are created by the lava flow that built the island. This photo was taken in 1909. In 1934, these stairs were built along the ridge on one side of the gut road. This is the ladder that gave Ladder Bay its current name. Partway up the ladder is a small building known as the Customs House, through which cargo passed before being carried to the bottom. It's now a hiking trail. Now, in the 1930s, some civil engineers from the Netherlands came to Saba, took a good look around, and said, "No way can you build a road here," and left. So Lambert Hassel, also known as Lambie, set out to prove them wrong. He took a correspondence course in civil engineering, designed and had Sabans build the road by hand. It took nearly 30 years to complete the road from Fort Bay Harbor to Flat Point, where the airport was built in the 1960s. These photos show the infamous S-curve on the way to Fort Bay that was recently widened thanks to funding from the Dutch government. This gives you an idea of why I've never driven a car on Saba. Today, Saba is known as the Unspoiled Queen, but not so long ago, it was known as the Island of Women. This is a still from a 1930s newsreel entitled The Island of Women, and you can find it on YouTube. Most of the Saban men spent their working lives at sea, which meant the population on Saba had nearly twice as many women as men. Women were often the breadwinners. Saba was full of female business owners, doctors, artists. The Saba Electric Company was started by a woman. The most successful cottage industry on Saba, starting from the late 1800s, was the production of Saba lace. Demand peaked in the 1920s, when products made with Saba lace were all the rage among high-end interior designers in the US and Europe. Each lace maker develops her own patterns, and patterns are handed down in families. And the lace ladies are still at it. You'll find them hard at work every Thursday afternoon in Windward Side. It's a little bit of living history on Saba, and visitors are welcome to stop by, have a cup of tea and a chat, and learn a little bit about how Saba lace is made. The ninth reason why people visit Saba. Well, some visitors to Saba don't dive, they don't hike, they don't birdwatch, they don't make glass beads or chase lizards. They come to Saba just to relax, unwind, and enjoy the peace and friendliness of the island. And the final reason why you should visit Saba. You get all of the above and no crime. No traffic, few mosquitoes, not a single Starbucks. For more about Saba, check out these websites.
All right. Oh my gosh. So what do you think? I mean, Sherry, I am ready to go.
Well, good. I'm glad I sold you. So the last we heard, they're talking about opening the island up to folks who are vaccinated on May 1st.
On May 1st.
Keep an eye on that. The Saba Tourism website is probably the best place to look for that kind of information. Yeah, because they've managed to keep the island COVID free. There were a few cases early on during the pandemic, but for the most part, they haven't had any cases of COVID on the island.
I have to say, I want lionfish. I want all of that. And I loved the jokes over in the chat. Everyone who was watching was just keeping us laughing in the background, right? So, we're ready for our lionfish with butter and a nice drink and ready to go. So if we want to visit you, then are we allowed to contact you? What's the best way? And I already went ahead and through this email.
Yeah. So if you're interested in more, the Flamboyant Cottage email is fine. You may get an answer from me, or you may hear from my spouse, because he generally handles that stuff. But yeah, definitely reach out to us there. You can also, if you're interested in diving, the folks at Sea Saba can put together a package that's both diving and you can stay at the cottage, or they'll, if you don't like our cottage, you can find another place to stay. They pride themselves in concierge service. So they're a really good group to dive with. And if you don't dive, I want to add this. So I talked about the pinnacles, which are really deep, but there's some fabulous diving right up alongside the island. There are some walls and reefs that are just marvelous. And some of those reefs are as shallow as 15 feet. So you can snorkel in the afternoons on the shallow afternoon dives and see a whole lot without having to, strap a tank on your back.
Oh, wow.
So you get to experience a little bit of the marine park. Some of those dives are really our favorites. I mean, once you've been to all the pinnacles a couple of times, it's sort of, a yawn fest, but But the shallower dives always have something to offer.
So I want to actually bring up something that you mentioned in preparation for this, and it's the fact that now that you and your partner have gone and visited so many times, they recognize you. Like the person stamping the password, or checking the passport, all of that stuff, they recognize
Yeah,
you. And
yeah.
so, what is
It,
that like to have this home away from home?
it didn't take long to really feel at home on Saba. I mean, they're not exaggerating when they say, actually, I'll answer Ronald's question in a second. It didn't take long to feel like, kind of a member of the community. And there's a lot of the folks you interact with as a tourist are expatriates. So they're folks from Britain or the US or Canada who have the Netherlands, who've moved to Saba, but some of them have lived there for 30 plus years. One of our favorite folks, actually one of the folks who manages our cottage for us, likes to say that she's American by birth and Saban by the grace of God. So, that's what this place is like.
I love that.
And yeah, we've had the experience of, we get off the plane, we get through the passport stamping process, walk out into the tiny little terminal room, and there's somebody standing there who goes, "Oh, Sherry, Larry, welcome home."
Sherry
It's
and
like,
Larry.
yeah,
Yes.
they know who we are. So it's just like that. It's really a delightful place. And Ronald was asking about liveaboards. I think it's the Caribbean Explorer is one of the liveaboards, and there may be a couple of others that they do have mooring lines that can handle the liveaboard boats. So they do dive there. Although sometimes people sarcastically call it the Caribbean Destroyer, but there you are. But I will say this: the thing you miss when you're on a liveaboard is the island. You miss the people. Right, because you're there, you're living on the boat, you're diving the reef, and that's all well and good, but you're really missing out on a chance to experience probably what the Caribbean was like in the 1940s and 50s before all the big, resort hotels were built. It's really special. And I said no crime. There's a little bit of crime on Saba, but mostly it doesn't affect tourists. And we leave the cottage completely unlocked when we're there. There's really not. Wants to do a combo trip. Absolutely.
Yeah. Ron says it's a yes and
a
combo trip. That's the thing, is that it just seems like for a place that I personally had never heard of Saba before. So I'm so glad that your 21 on 21 was on Saba, so that I had a chance to be introduced to it. But the art seems amazing. I want to go and create that and work with the glass. I mean, thank you so much for laying all of this out for us so that we have the opportunity to see so much about it. Why we shouldn't, but really why we should go and visit Saba. I really, really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed doing this.
All right. Fantastic. So with that, I want to say thank you to Sherry once again for being a part of 21 and 21. And where's your talk for all of you watching? What are you going to do your 21 and 21 on? As always, I always close out every podcast and every interview trying to remind everyone to keep asking questions every day, because as Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. We'll see you in Saba, everyone. Oh my gosh. If I can just get this rolling, then we'll see you in Saba. See you in Saba.